Part of the movement towards peace, I hope, which again is bringing good out of evil of a present situation, is to convince people, especially young people, that you can't create peace unless you're at peace yourself within your family, with your mother and father or your sisters and brothers, with your neighbors and your classmates, with the nation in which you live, that you're not torn apart on a lot of special interests, but you're committed to what we call the common good of everyone, with your global neighbors, if you will.
Please welcome Kroc Institute Ph.D. student and CEO of New Syrian Human, Jude Ash.
Here, the walls have ears. That is what my uncle told me when I first returned to Syria after being raised abroad. If you ever see a statue for the president, he said, turn away. Do not criticize. Watch your every thought, lest you be sent behind the sun to suffer a horrific death. Uncle, I said, you're so dramatic. But a former prisoner himself, my uncle knew very well what happened to those who dared to speak out in a place where citizens were considered little more than sheep in a herd, expected only to obey, deprived of their rights to act, think, or even dream, independent of the omnipotent and omniscient tyrant. He also knew very well that I would not listen. After decades of suffering horrific repression, and inspired by a recent wave of unprecedented protests unfolding in the Middle East, the Syrian people finally decided to speak out. On the 18th of March 2011, a group of Syrian children painted 4 words of graffiti on their school wall. "Your turn has come, doctor," it said, referring to their ophthalmologist regime president, Bashar al-Assad. 4 words ignited a spark that set the country ablaze and changed Syria forever. When videos flooded Facebook and YouTube showing protesters shot in cold blood by snipers in the streets and the bodies of children mutilated by torture, I, like millions of other Syrians, could no longer repress this need to speak out. So, in the southern city of Sueda, in Syria, I joined a group of my friends to organize nonviolent protests calling for freedom, dignity, and human rights. These protests were unprecedented. In over 50 years, our city had not witnessed such a public display of dissent. Almost all of us who participated had never before experienced what it felt like to freely express your opinion in the street. Syrians had many grievances, but we could only articulate our demands in 2 words that formed the spirit around which Syrians later mobilized: Hurriye, freedom, and Karame, dignity. I remember very well when I first chanted for Hurriye and Karame in the street. Hurriye للأبد غصباً عنك يا أسد. Freedom forever, like it or not, Assad. I understood then just how precious freedom and dignity really are, and how interrelated. You see, without the ability to express yourself freely, independent of collective authority, without the belief that you are worthy and capable of being the change you want to see in this world, we lose precisely that which makes us human. Without freedom and dignity, there is no peace. Yet, as my uncle had warned, this decision to express yourself freely in the street and demand the rights of your fellow citizens proved very costly. In August 2011, I was arrested from a peaceful demonstration. As punishment for speaking politics, I got to visit the dreaded land beyond the sun, which turned out to be underground torture chambers. Not as creative, I guess. In any case, I made it out alive, only after realizing that, boy, my uncle was not exaggerating. Many of my friends, however, were not so lucky. Released only under condition of permanent exile, I have not stepped foot in the country I call home or seen the people I once loved, including my family, in over 6 years, and I probably never will. Yet, we were all fully aware of the consequences when we took to the streets, defying one of the most barbaric regimes in recent history, with little more than our claim to justice. What we did not expect, however, was just how alone we were going to be in this struggle. After exile, you see, we Syrians never really asked for much. All we wanted was to live in freedom and dignity and peace. Let not the haze of chaos and war and propaganda lead you astray. It is for freedom and dignity and peace that over 500,000 Syrians have been slaughtered and over 12 million displaced, while the entire world either watched in silence or acted in complicity. After exile and no longer able to join my sisters and brothers in the streets, I traveled across the Middle East, leaving a budding career in engineering in Dubai. My mom was not happy about it. Hi, Mom. So I traveled across the Middle East to work with Syrian refugees in their refugee communities. And I traveled across Turkey and Lebanon and worked closely with Syrians for over 5 years. During those years, I got to know my fellow Syrians, their needs and their communal dynamics in ways that only a local can. Despite devastating individual and collective trauma, the Syrian refugee communities were bristling with potential. Thousands of people with the ability and will to create change. One very good example was Maryam, a Syrian torture and rape survivor. When I first met Maryam in Turkey, she was understandably broken. After hearing her story, and with tears in my eyes, I asked her, "What can we do to help Maryam?" You would expect that she asked for food, shelter, or even money to feed her children. Yet, while she desperately needed all of these, I was shocked to hear her say that she wanted to get up on her feet and start a woman-led business to help other women in the community. And Maryam wasn't alone in this. A survey we conducted in the region revealed that the Syrian refugee community's greatest need was not for food, not shelter, not money. While they needed all of that, what they really needed was jobs and sources of livelihood, so they are able to provide for their families in dignity. Unfortunately, however, by and large, with few exceptions, including CRS, the multi-billion-dollar industry of international aid was not built to listen to local people. While working in Syrian refugee communities, I came to see what I can only describe as a donor-driven, dependency-based model of aid, in which international organizations look to donors as points of reference, not the people they serve, and view local populations as little more than passive recipients whose only role is to wait in line for the white Western angel on a unicorn to come down from the cloud and save them. What this model failed to see, and indeed actively crushed, were the enormous resources existing and already available in these communities. So, in the spirit of the Syrian saying that goes, "Only your own nail can scratch your back," I joined a group of amazing Syrians and founded a people-driven, empowerment-based Syrian international nonprofit with a mission to empower local communities to lead their own processes of change. Our dream was to bridge the international, and the local. Our method of operation, we called it community-based empowerment, was to identify and empower what we call existing strategic leverages of change, and that is leaders and institutions in the local communities, and empower them to create organic, cost-effective, and sustainable processes of change that not only impact individuals, but communities, structures, and even cultures. We named it after what we sought to build. We wanted to build a human, one who is empowered, healed, and an active agent of change. We wanted to build the next Syrian human. Yet, none of that was really possible at the time. You see, we were all refugees ourselves. We were all strategic leverages of change who needed empowerment before we can effectively help others. For me, personally, that empowerment came when I met who many of you know, a Catholic priest who many of you know as Father Dan Grudi on the Turkish-Syrian border. Father Dan helped me come here to Notre Dame and later joined our board of directors. At Notre Dame, I have and continue every day to learn about strategic peace building, locally led and context-sensitive development, and the cutting-edge advances in trauma therapy and emotion psychology. Through the legacy of Father Ted, embodied by Father Dan, I was empowered. It wasn't long before 3 of our founding members were in the US. Sarah is now a rising author and Middle Eastern Studies scholar in Chicago. Jamil is a community organizer and entrepreneur in Phoenix, and I here at Notre Dame. All of us getting empowered to funnel that empowerment through to our Syrian sisters and brothers around the world. And no, we did not forget about Maryam. In 2016, with the help of amazing volunteers at Notre Dame here and the Holy Cross Village senior community, we organized a fundraiser and raised $10,000 that went to establish the first female-led store and business in southern Turkey, managed entirely by Maryam and her group of torture survivors. Soon after, Maryam came to me and told me that she wanted to start a learning center. You see, through Notre Dame, I was empowered, and then through me, Maryam was empowered, and that's how it works. The snowball of empowerment kept rolling. When I first heard Maryam saying that, I balked at such a huge dream, but she didn't wait for me. She went on her own and mobilized the community and found a space, some equipment, and some volunteer teachers, and started a learning center. Soon after, we were able to jump in and provide some equipment and overhead costs and some technical support. Today, the Better Life Learning Center provides college and school prep, trauma therapy, and peace education to hundreds of Syrian refugee children and adolescents in Turkey. Father Ted once said, part of the movement for peace is bringing good out of evil. And if you are not at peace yourself, you cannot create peace. We Syrians are fully capable of leading our own processes of change, but we cannot do it alone. The first step of creating lasting positive change involves empowering resources already existing in the communities, and that is the people. To do that, the world needs to open their doors. If Father Ted was here, I believe he would say that a nation that cherishes freedom, indeed a nation that is built on freedom, should offer the people who have sacrificed everything for its sake, not travel bans, not closed doors, but empowerment and open hearts. Shukran. Salam.